Hello, and welcome to episode 13 of The More You Nole, a podcast about Florida State University. I'm your host, Mike, Director of Social Media for Florida State's Office of Admissions. Thanks for downloading this week's episode. If you haven't subscribed to The More You Nole yet, you can find us on Spotify, Apple or Google Podcasts, and anywhere else you can download podcasts. You can also find prior episodes of the show on our YouTube channel, as well as on our website, admissions.fsu.edu/podcast. This week's guests are Cyndel, Brunell, and Michelle Presley from FSU Sustainable Campus, which is dedicated to educating and engaging students, staff, and faculty to set an example of campus sustainability and position Florida State as a leader of environmental and social action. Cyndel and Michelle are really passionate about their work and very proud of how much Sustainable Campus has accomplished in their first 10 years. In our interview, we'll discover their paths to Florida State, what sustainability is and isn't, some of Sustainable Campus's initiatives and programs, and how students can get involved. We hope you enjoy the interview. All right, I'm here with Cyndel Brunell, the Engagement Coordinator, and Michelle Presley, Communications Coordinator, both from Florida State University's Sustainable Campus. Thanks so much for being on the show with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, so just to get started, I just want to hear a little bit about your backgrounds. Can you tell us about your journeys to Florida State? I guess we'll start with Cyndel.
Yeah, definitely. So my name is Cyndel, and I am the Sustainability Engagement Coordinator at Florida State Sustainable Campus. And so sustainability is something I have been interested in my entire life. When I was growing up, I thought I was going to be Steve Irwin. I gave my mom lots of heart attacks because I'd be out in the Jersey pines with bushy sticks looking for snakes. I brought a couple home. Those weren't great days for her. But whenever I went to college, I ended up going to UNC Chapel Hill and got involved in different environmental organizations there. And I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do long term, but I became a resident assistant while I was there. And that was probably the biggest pivotal moment for me in my career journey. I realized that I really liked working with students and being a mentor and, being a leader to students. And so I actually, changed my grad school plans entirely and ended up going to grad school at Clemson for student affairs. And while I was there, I was working for housing as well. But an opportunity arose to be the graduate assistant for sustainability. And everyone in the department knew that it was something I was really passionate about because I talked about it frequently. So when the opportunity arose, I was able to make a position switch into that role and started doing sustainability work in higher education, which is something that I had no idea existed, much like most of student affairs. And so worked with students doing sustainability education there for a couple of years before graduating and coming to Florida State. And so this is my third year, going into my third year here, working with students in sustainability at Florida State. And I have learned a lot as a professional and as a person and as a sustainability educator. And I think that that's probably the most important thing to know about sustainability is that everyone's on their own journey and learning and growing all the time. And it's really cool to be able to do so alongside of the amazing students I get to work with.
Awesome. Thanks. What about you, Michelle?
Yeah, so I'm actually a two-time FSU grad. I came to FSU for my undergrad, got a degree in English literature. And then when I graduated with my bachelor's, I taught for a few years. I taught high school. I taught a couple different grade levels. And throughout that time, I've always been interested in the environment, but really my interest in sustainability stems from my love of the outdoors. So I've always loved hiking, camping, always been a really outdoorsy person, kind of similar to Cyndel, running around in the woods, picking up random stray critters, bringing them home, much to the dismay of my parents. But as I kind of went along through that evolution of coming into the outdoors, I realized that these habitats, these places, these public lands are worth protecting. And there's a lot of policy and environmental issues that go into protecting the places that I liked to recreate outdoors. And so that's kind of how my interest in sustainability grew. And then so as I was teaching, I actually started a blog about going outdoors and really found a lot of joy in writing about my experiences in the outdoors, writing about environmentalism, and decided to pursue the master's in public interest media and communication at FSU so that I could get better at telling stories of sustainability and be a better advocate for the things that I was really passionate about. And so enrolled in the master's program after what I like to call my little radical sabbatical of teaching and traveling and going outdoors a whole bunch, and found myself in a graduate assistantship at Sustainable Campus doing communications for this office, and just loved it so much. I love working with all of the students. I love being able to take communication and advocacy skills and use them for this kind of greater purpose of solving some of these larger problems like climate change and consumerism and all of these big topics, and really helping students find a way to translate their passion into their own sustainability journey.
Oh, it's such a great story. I think it's great that you both spent your childhood picking up random critters in the woods and scaring your parents. So this question's for Michelle, since you also did your undergrad work here. I'm always interested to know why students chose to attend Florida State, since we have a lot of prospective students who are listening to the show. I know they're interested and would love to hear that answer as well.
Well, I think for one thing, when I was an undergrad, I grew up in South Florida. And so just coming to Florida State and seeing just the stateliness of the campus and the pine trees and just how beautiful it is, it's definitely a warm welcome. But I think the thing that made me stay, and definitely the thing that made me return, was the caliber of faculty that we have here and the amount of support that you get as a student to really pursue the things that you're passionate about. And I think that as we kind of go along in this conversation, you'll see like Cyndel and I, we're both really interested in sustainability, but we both took really different paths to kind of get to where we are. And so just the ability to kind of weave your own interests and weave your own story into the work that you do at Florida State, and how supportive faculty and staff are of that, I think is one of the things that I love most about FSU.
Cool. And Cyndel, I guess in a similar way or similar question, was there something about FSU that attracted you to the job opening here, or was it just more of like a kind of right place, right time thing?
It was kind of all the above. I actually was really fortunate to be able to work with Florida State before actually coming to work here. So one of the things that happens every year for one of the programs that we coordinate, the Ecorep program, which is a peer-to-peer sustainability leadership program, is a conference called the Southeastern Ecorep Conference. And it brings together a bunch of schools from the Southeast region in the US to talk about unique sustainability issues we are being faced with. How are we solving them on our campuses? How are we getting students involved? And I was serving on the conference planning committee in my second year of grad school. And Florida State was also on the planning committee. And so I got to work really closely on that committee with Florida State and see some of the amazing things that were being done here, and was bringing some of those things back to Clemson, where I was working in sustainability. And then, of course, when the job posting came up, I was like, fingers crossed, like, please, look at my resume, recognize me, please. Which also became one of the most stressful things, because I was very aware that, if something didn't go well, on that committee, if they thought I wouldn't be a good fit for the position, that, I would no longer be a candidate. But luckily, everything went really great with that conference, and, had been a really good fit for this position. And so I think Florida State is really a leader in sustainability engagement for students and programming in particular. We do a really good job of engaging students on a wide array of topics. And it's really cool to be able to work on the inside of that and grow and kind of learn some of the behind the scene things. But, kind of to what Michelle was talking about, a huge thing that we talk about in sustainability often, when people are interested in working in sustainability long-term, is skill building and capacity building. And so, my supervisor will say all day, so that's the director of sustainability, Elizabeth Swyman, you can have a degree in sustainability, you can have a degree in environmental science, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you have the skills. And so if you're interested in a career in sustainability long-term, take time to build skills that make you a valuable candidate within the realm of sustainability, because having the sustainability knowledge isn't necessarily enough to do the work.
Cool. So kind of let's move into that topic of sustainability. For the listeners who might not really have a full knowledge yet, can you please explain the concept of sustainability? Because I think it's probably a lot larger than most people think it is.
It definitely is. And I think I've been in this role going on 3 years now, and I still don't have a concise way to try to explain the concept of sustainability. And it's much larger than what people would think at first glance. And so typically when I'm in a room with students and I'm trying to see what they know about sustainability to start defining it, the question that I pose is, how would you define sustainability? And oftentimes the crowd will respond with a variety of questions. They'll say green, recycling, waste minimization. Those are the things that people interact with pretty frequently when it comes to sustainability and tend to associate with sustainability. But there are a lot of different models that seek to define sustainability and its different intersections. And so there's this idea that sustainability is comprised of three pillars: the environment, the economy, and people. And that in order to achieve a sustainable society, you can't just make environmental changes, because everything about our environment is driven by people, and people are driven by the economy. And so these three things work together to build sustainability. And so I'll often talk about a shirt as an example, because we all are familiar with kind of the idea of shopping and shirts. And, fast fashion is also something that's been a hot topic over the past couple of years. But any kind of like the journey of stuff is important to consider in sustainability. And behind every shirt, it starts with a fiber. And whether that fiber is natural or synthetic, and how it's produced, how it's grown, what resources, water-wise, fertilizer-wise, are put into that shirt. And then if it's cotton, that cotton has to be processed into fiber to be used for that shirt. And that's happening by people. And so now you're bringing in that social element. So we have the environment in where was that cotton grown? Is it organic? Was there fertilizers? How much water was used? How was it shipped to a production place? But then you bring in people. People have to grow the cotton. People have to pick the cotton. People have to process the cotton. Are they working in safe environments? Are they getting paid fair wages? And so talking about a shirt and its journey from start to finish is a really good way to illustrate all of the different touch points sustainability has economically and in society. And that it's more than just the environment. And so the surface level kind of answer of sustainability typically is very environmental oriented, but when you start to really drill down and think systemically, you realize that there's a lot of people cost and a lot of economy behind any decision that's happening that will either make something to be considered sustainable or unsustainable. And so the idea that we like to talk about a lot is kind of doing what you can with what you have where you are. And decision making is a huge part of that in sustainability, and trying to think about the journey of things, the journey of stuff, and how are you going to be a good resource steward of that stuff long term to help create a more sustainable society. And that's just one element of sustainability. There's so many different passions and so many different topics. Whatever anyone is interested in, it definitely intersects with sustainability in some way. You might not see it at the surface, but when you start to kind of think about it or read about it or apply it, you realize like, wow, this is actually pretty cool. And I can see how these two things overlap. I'm really interested in the way that feminism and sustainability interact. There's a whole entire theory of ecofeminism, for example, that kind of tries to talk about that, and that kind of the same oppressions that women face, the environment faces. And so there's a myriad of ways that you can bring your interest into sustainability, and just knowing that sustainability is so much more broad and complex than just the environment is a place to start, and to think about how does the things that I'm passionate about relate to sustainability.
And can you guys give us a brief history of, I guess, the Sustainable Campus initiative here at Florida State?
Yeah, so Sustainable Campus actually is a relatively new entity in terms of the office. But sustainability has been happening at Florida State for a while. And actually, it started back in the early 2000s. There was a smaller group of faculty and staff that kind of gathered to learn what was already happening on campus and ways to make our campus more sustainable, and to like combine forces to make a more formal sustainability initiative. And then our office actually was created in 2010. And then at that point, there are actually already a few programs in existence. So these include Garnet and Gold Goes Green, which is our very recognizable game day recycling initiative, and Ecoreps, which Cyndel mentioned earlier. It's kind of our group of student leaders that advocate for sustainability on campus, and also Chuck It for Charity. It's one of our cornerstone programs. It's a move out program. So at the end of the spring semester, we collect unwanted goods and help redistribute those to keep them out of the landfills, and donate them to our community partners.
So kind of moving into what Sustainable Campus does, I want to start with what are some of the challenges that college campuses and maybe Florida State in particular face with regards to sustainability?
Well, I think one area that is a little tricky with sustainability in college campuses is just the integration of sustainability. So as Cyndel talked about, sustainability easily touches most aspects of life, and that includes to the way that institutions like universities run. But I think something that we can often run into in sustainability is being siloed. And so just kind of combating the notion that sustainability lives in its own silo, but rather instead of that, sustainability is this thread that runs throughout all of university operations, and really making sure that we're advocating for sustainability in kind of like the larger scope of the university's larger priorities and projects.
Another issue that we kind of faced on college campuses, specifically when I'm thinking of engagement, is how do we get students interested in sustainability that think they're not interested in sustainability? So kind of what we just talked about, that sustainability is all encompassing. But if a student thinks that it's only about climate change and how do you fix climate issues, they may not see themselves in that question or their passions in that question. And so how do we get the students that aren't interested in sustainability interested in interacting with us? And so our programs typically attract students that are very interested in sustainability. But what we know about sustainability is that to solve the world's greatest issues in climate change, we are going to need collaborative solutions from a variety of different perspectives and people. And the more people that we can bring to the table, the more inclusive and successful our solutions are going to be. Because in trying to achieve a sustainable society, it can be really easy to leave behind different populations of people. And so to try to come up with solutions that are going to include everyone and not disproportionately impact or leave behind anyone, we need to have every voice represented at the table if possible, which is really hard to do if people don't see themselves in sustainability in the first place. And so trying to be creative with how we're marketing our programming or titling our programming, or with creative partnerships across campus to start to introduce students to the idea that they can see themselves in sustainability. And it's really important for them to be seen in sustainability and represented in sustainability.
Yeah. And not to just pile on more challenges, but there is the one that we have to mention, that just the student population at FSU and at universities all over the place is constantly in flux, right? So there's every couple of years, it's a whole new group of students. And so it really keeps us on our toes in terms of education and outreach to just, it's a cyclical process. And that's part of why it's so fun and part of how we get that diverse input of so many different perspectives and so many different people. But it also is like a double-edged sword of just continuous efforts to outreach and engage a changing population.
Yeah, we have to go through very similar challenges in the Office of Admissions. We're constantly recruiting a new class of students. I mean, I think a lot of people think once we're done admitting students for the year, that's it, and we just kind of like take a break until next August when the application opens. But that's like absolutely not how it works. And we're already like working like before we were even done with this year's class, we were already working on next year's class. It's just that cycle affects, I think, everything at the university. And I think you're right. It's definitely a challenge, but it keeps things fresh. Like things are constantly changing in our department. And I know it's because we're constantly working with a new group of students every year. So I think a lot of people might think of like being sustainable as a bit of a challenge, or maybe like something that is going to make their life more difficult. But I actually think it can do kind of the opposite. I think it can improve our lives in a lot of ways. So I'm interested in some of the ways that Sustainable Campus has helped improve the overall campus experience. I'm wondering if you've got any for us.
So there are a variety of different ways, if you were to look across campus, that you could see the mark that Sustainable Campus has physically had. So there are a couple of green fund projects that you'll be able to see across campus, which is a sustainability fund that can be donated to every single year. And then we use it to fund projects that students and faculty are interested in. And we've actually recently changed how the green fund operates, but An example of this is the solar umbrellas. There are solar umbrellas located on the Legacy Walk and outside of the Steak and Shake. And these are umbrellas that have solar panels attached to the top of them. And students can plug in their laptop or cell phone to charge them in between classes. Of course, there is the water bottle refill stations. And those are the hydration stations that you'll see where you can take your water bottle right up to it and it'll fill up your water bottle. And that prevents plastic waste from going to the landfill or to the recycling by allowing students to more easily fill up their reusable cups. And there's actually an outdoor hydration station located on Landis. So if you're ever outdoors and need a little bit of water, you can top up there. Another Green Fund project were eclipse for marching chiefs so that they had less paper waste while marching around. So now they have electric notes that they can follow while they're marching. And of course, a huge piece of infrastructure that everyone sees is the Seminole Organic Garden. And so that is a place that students can go on campus and hang out, learn to garden. A lot of people think that they have a brown thumb or that they can't garden, but we have the most amazing garden coordinators that help everyone grow their own produce and show that it's possible for you to grow your own produce and plants. And it's a really great spot just to come and de-stress from classes, hang out. People come and do yoga out there, play their guitar, work on class projects. And so that's a really unique space that is on campus for students to enjoy that I really admire and was so impressed with when I first came to campus and continue to be impressed with how beautiful the things are that grow there. And then the way that that is able to support student growth and development.
I love that garden. I can see it. I can see it from my office window. So it's really nice to be able to do that, to just watch people working out there. I garden myself at home too. And I also, I really like that. I think it was your predecessor, actually. I was at an event and she told me that if I'm ever in the garden and I see like berries growing on the tree or whatever, that I can just take one. It's totally fine.
Yes. So I would say with caution, that space is rented out by students. And so this is actually maybe a great time to talk about this, but the garden is an open space for all people to enjoy, but students actually rent the beds. And so if there's stuff growing on trees and such around the garden, there's a mulberry bush out there, definitely feel free to take it. But if it's something growing directly in a bed, that's something that a student has paid for and worked on cultivating. And so we try to encourage people to refrain from picking those plants so that the students who've invested in it can ultimately, reap the rewards of that produce. Whenever we do have extra produce, we try to donate it to the Food for Thought pantry as well. So we try to eliminate any kind of produce waste in the garden to the best of our ability, either through students taking it home or donating it on campus to the Food for Thought pantry.
That's great. I think it actually was the mulberry tree or bush. And I'd never had mulberry before, and I tried one, and it was absolutely delicious.
They're so good. It's so hard because I want people to know about that mulberry bush because, campus really has a lot of different fruit trees and plants everywhere to glean from. But then the more people know about that mulberry bush, the less mulberries there are for me.
Yeah, I try to be very judicious. I'll walk by and I'll see them on there. I'll just take one.
Yes. Well, I share the knowledge with everyone because I love everyone and want them to have the same opportunities, but definitely sometimes I'm a little bit selfish.
So speaking of that garden, I'm really interested. Do either of you know, I know since you're both kind of relatively new to the sustainable campus world, do you have any background on how that got started?
Yeah, so the Seminole Organic Garden, like every other initiative in our office, was started by students. And so I think that's really unique and cool about our office too, that every single initiative was started by students who had an idea and we supported them figuring out the roadblocks and the how-to, and they made it happen. And so our students truly lead our office. And so we had students that were really interested in gardening and trying to start an on-campus garden. And it actually was located across the sidewalk from where it is now. And it actually started as a tree garden with some bushes and stuff. So it was fruit trees. It was a couple of different plants, a couple of different planters, very small. It was kind of keyhole shaped instead of what it is now. And then eventually that area was going through construction. So that whole area, that whole part of campus looks very different today than it did several years ago. If you were to look several years ago, it essentially was a big grassy field between campus and where the stadium is. But now we've got the circus, we've got that really nice sidewalk and pedestrian bridges, parking lots, the residence halls, all of it has been really developed. And so whenever that development was happening, we moved the garden across the sidewalk and have that really nice space now that works really well for us. And now we have 32 raised beds out there. And we had a lot of support from campus and community partners to help get it funded and started. And of course, our on-campus partners, grounds and landscaping, who have continually helped us troubleshoot the area and figure out how to grow things, how to do things. And so the success of that space, started with students and their passion, and then connecting them to the right resources and right partners to make it happen.
So if students want to get a bed in the garden, how do they go about doing that?
They can just reach out to us at Sustainable Campus. We have multiple different avenues. You can reach out over social media or email, and we'll connect you with the garden coordinator, and they'll send you a contract and take care of paying for the rental, which is $15 a semester. And then you can come out during garden work days and work, or just to come and hang out. But the only time that we are out there helping people garden is during the work days, which are a couple hours, a couple times a week, so that we can try to interact with the most amount of people.
That's great. So for the cost of like 2 pizzas, you could grow food all semester for yourself. That's great.
And we try to really connect what students are growing back to their kitchens too. So we'll collaborate with Seminole Dining, and they'll bring out chefs and they'll teach us how to make garden fresh salsa. So you can take stuff growing directly from the garden that you paid that $15 for, and then get a meal out of it or a snack out of it, or, learn how to take the seeds from it and continue growing. So we try to make everything as circular as possible.
I think that $15 goes pretty far in terms of somebody like I used to consider myself solidly brown thumb. But I really appreciate, like, once you were able to rent a bed and work alongside the garden coordinator and really learn about gardening, like, that to me is so worth it, to just have somebody there with you, kind of holding your hand and helping you troubleshoot things. Because Lord knows I don't know why a plant is wilting and brown and sad, and I just really need somebody's help.
And our garden coordinator that we have right now, and I mean, they are all amazing, truly, every garden coordinator we've had, but her name is Emma, and she is so dedicated to the garden and so knowledgeable about plants. I remember one day we had a thunderstorm warning, like we got an FSU alert that there was a thunderstorm coming, and she was like, I'm going to go out to the garden and put some rocks on the following roots of these plants. And I was like, oh, okay, why? And she was like, oh, I just don't want them to get blown over in the storm. They have weak root systems. I would never know that. But the care she has for the garden makes it incredibly beautiful, and she cares for all the plants out there. So the students that work in our office truly make everything possible.
All right. So another thing I was learning about in my research before this interview, I saw that you guys recently did a virtual museum exhibit as part of the FSU libraries about the 50th anniversary of Earth Day. I was wondering if either of you were involved in that and what it was like digging through the archives to learn about all this history of environmentalism at Florida State.
Yeah, so actually our academics and engagement coordinator, Laura Lynn, was really kind of the lead on this project. And so I was talking to her a little bit before this, just about her experiences going through the archives. And I went down to the library a few times to work with the special collections staff. And I think overwhelmingly the most interesting thing between Laura Lynn and I was just like following the threads. So we would broadly search, like sustainability at FSU and kind of the history of the environmental movement at FSU and across the state. And so we would find these like key figures, and then Laura Lynn would go to the state archives and kind of follow those threads of those stories and just find really incredible things and really incredible people that over the last 50 years have really kind of advanced the environmental movement. And I think the other part of that project that was so interesting to me was just seeing how pivotal students are in starting movements. And so especially movements on college campuses. Earth Day began as a national teach-in. So it was always kind of tied to education in this way. And something that I really liked about that project was seeing how FSU students in particular kind of started the environmental movement and how that connects to what we're doing now.
I think also the perspective too, it's really easy for us to get caught up in the current moment or thinking of the future, and to take a minute to zoom out and see what has been done over time and see how much progress has been made just in environmentalism, activism on FSU's campus was really special to get to see that evolution and, realize that sometimes we don't necessarily see, the the impact of our work immediately. A lot of the work that we're doing is more long-term. And so sometimes it can almost get a little bit discouraging. But when you have a chance to really step back from it and kind of look at the breadth of what's been achieved over 50 years, it really does give you a sense of hope for the next 50 years and what might be accomplished. And so it was a really special moment to just be able to zoom out and appreciate where we are, and also have a big appreciation for where we could be going.
So I want to kind of move more into some questions about involvement. And the first thing I want to know is, why should students get involved with Sustainable Campus?
We have a really cool office mascot. We have a little dinosaur. It's Sustainosaurus Rex. He's very cool. But you only get to interact with Sustainosaurus Rex if you're in our office. But in all seriousness, I think there's so many different reasons for students to get involved with Sustainable Campus. And, the biggest ones that I really think of don't necessarily even relate to sustainability explicitly. I think by interacting with our office, we teach students to be critical consumers, to do research, and to be advocates for themselves, for what they're passionate about, for the environment, how to be good stewards of the planet, and connecting their passions to sustainability and develop skills.
So what are some of the things students can do through Sustainable Campus? What are some of your major events or programs or initiatives that students can get involved in?
There are a variety of different ways for students to get involved with our office. We maintain a robust calendar of events, all of which are easily accessible on our website and also on our social media. We do have a couple of staple events that we do every semester, such as Propagation 101. That's something that's really popular. Students enjoy learning how to propagate their own plants. Outside of the programming that we maintain month to month, we also have a couple of different campaigns that we do. So we have Strive Not to Drive, which is an educational campaign with a series of events that help students learn about sustainable forms of transportation. We have Earth Month and Sustainability Month, which both have a set of programming around those topics. And a huge program that we do at the end of every single year is Chuck It for Charity. And we take items that students no longer want, and they can donate it as they're moving out of their residence halls. And then we work with local nonprofits to donate them into communities here in Tallahassee and in the Big Bend region. Those are kind of the big things. We really do program on such a wide variety of things, everything from food waste, the garden, fast fashion, leadership, sustainability 101. We've tried to bring as many people in and collaborate with different people so that we have a wide array of programs so that anyone can get involved with us. And we have programs that are highly educational or highly social, so that no matter your learning style, you'll be able to find something that will be a good interaction point.
And then how do some of the Sustainable Campus initiatives intersect with students' educational opportunities at Florida State?
So on the academic side of the house, we actually also have a lot of different ways that students can become involved in sustainability. And this is even across all of the different disciplines. So students don't even necessarily have to major in environmental science or any of the environmental fields. Just another example of how this can be so diverse and inclusive across curriculum. But our Living Labs program basically allows classes and professors to treat campus as a living lab. So students can get real world experience and do real research on sustainability topics on campus. There's also our Sustainability Fellows program, which is similar in that it's a project-based, really real world, hands-on educational experience that students can have to work with campus and community partners to solve problems. And so what I really like about each of these programs is that students can come away with something tangible, a project that they worked on, a problem that they helped solve. And it's a really great way to integrate what they're learning in the classroom to real world applications that they can then show future employers.
Which really goes back to kind of what I said initially about kind of skills and sustainability. This is a way that you can develop skills. So the programming side of the house is more so about knowledge, skill building, capacity building, but then the curricular side of the house is a lot more applicable to professional development. So they really do complement each other really well and work together to create a holistic sustainability experience for students.
So in talking about, I guess, how we can practice sustainability in our everyday lives, I've got a question from one of our listeners. They were wondering, what's one habit students can change to help practice sustainability?
So this isn't maybe a habit per se, but something that I'll tell people whenever they're looking to make sustainable changes is a little bit so something I tell people whenever they're wanting to make sustainable changes is to try to move away from convenience if possible. A lot of the things that our society is built around is convenience, which also tends to relate to throwing things away. And so there's a statistic that is thrown around in the sustainability world, and it's that only 1% of the things that we use today will be in use in 6 months. We live in a throwaway society. And if you think about it, we do interact with a lot of throwaway items, and whether that's stuff for takeout or, if we're purchasing something, we don't necessarily expect it to last a long time and we're okay with it. So trying to move away from convenience in the sense of, yes, it's convenient to purchase a plastic water bottle from the gas station on the way to school, but can you carry a water bottle with you and fill it when you get into the building at a water bottle hydration station? And so part of it is like a huge sense of remembrance, like remembering to bring a reusable water bottle or to bring reusable utensils or to bring reusable straws, for example. Those are things that all of us can carry with us pretty easily. And then that prevents a straw from going to the landfill, a water bottle from going to the landfill. And that is particularly hard right now during the COVID time, but definitely water bottles and straws are something that we can continue to try to reuse. And then, on the way of convenience, is there a day a week you can walk to class versus drive to class? And yes, that might be a little bit more inconvenient, but it's really nice to walk to campus in the morning. And I love hearing the birds and looking at the trees. And you realize how much of our commuting is very solo in the US by driving in a single car. But when I walk or bike to campus and get to interact with people on my way to work and get to see them every single day, there's a huge sense of community and a connection to place that it's fostered that I wouldn't have otherwise if I commuted my car every single day.
Plus, you don't have to fight for parking, so that's super
nice.
Yeah, you could also take the campus buses if you live near campus.
Oh yeah,
I think now if it's not now, it's by the end of the year. Our bus fleet is entirely electric.
That is,
so you don't even have to worry about emissions if you're riding the bus.
Yes.
I was really happy when I saw that news come out. It was like, it made my day, the news that the day they sent the email out saying all our buses are going to be electric. Yeah. They're just so much quieter too. They're so much nicer for everything.
They are so quiet.
Scary. So most people do commute by bike to campus. And so the first time I had an electric bus pass me on my bike, I didn't even hear it coming. Usually I can hear the buses from behind me, but this thing just passed me and it was so startling. I was like, oh my. but that's a good trade-off to have. So yeah, I wonder, what would you say for students living sustainably?
Yeah, so I think just to kind of build on that, a lot of people have heard the 3 R's: reduce, reuse, recycle. And I think just really being cognizant of the fact that reduce and reuse are the first parts of that equation, and recycle should always be kind of your last thought rather than your first. And so just really thinking about ways that you can already use what you have. I know Cyndel talked about moving away from convenience. That doesn't mean that sustainability needs to be difficult or it needs to be expensive. A lot of sustainability is just kind of using what you already have. I take a lot of pride in being able to kind of MacGyver the things that I already have and fix my clothes and really take time to mend and repair rather than just immediately replace. I'm also really into thrifting and getting things secondhand. And so that's another way to just kind of keep those materials out of the landfill and give things a second life. And I know that's not necessarily one habit, but it's kind of a habit of mind. And once you adopt that mindset, it almost becomes second nature to kind of look around and say like, okay, how can I fix this? Or how can I get this used? And not only do you help the environment, but a lot of times that's the cheaper way and more cost efficient way to do things.
Yeah, I think just to kind of tie that to, there's just the idea that sustainability isn't stuff. And I think it's really easy to have stuff kind of marketed to you as being sustainable. That's kind of a concept that we would refer to as greenwashing. And the things you have are infinitely more sustainable than the things you would have to purchase, even if they're marketed as being sustainable. So the reusable bags you already have are more sustainable than purchasing a canvas set from Etsy that are handmade and super cute. And although those will probably last a long time, using what you have first is always going to be the most sustainable option. And you should never have to pay to participate in sustainability. And I think that there's kind of a divide that exists in the sustainability world of people that will kind of promote electric water heaters or electric cars as the end all be all. And yes, that's one element to reducing emissions, but that's not something that every person can participate with every day. But we all are consumers and can make choices day to day about what we're choosing to consume or not consume, or use or not use, or reuse or repurpose, upcycle. And there's a lot of creativity you can develop in a sustainability journey around those kind of things, which I think are also really special. And so I always just like to communicate to students that sustainability isn't stuck and you don't have to buy anything to participate.
So what can we look forward to from Sustainable Campus for the start of the new fall semester?
So something I'm really excited about this year, our students are all returning to our office. We don't have any new staff, and they're really excited to dive deeper on the topics that we're really passionate about. And so it's really easy to program about surface level things, but the way that we're scaling our year is to have surface level conversations, but then also drill down deeper and talk about some of those intersection points that we don't normally get a chance to talk about with society and economics. And I think this year we're really going to be building out a calendar that is useful in skill building and capacity building. So we get so many questions from students about how can they be more sustainable? And yes, we can provide tips, but a lot of sustainability really comes from thinking through a couple of questions when you're about to do something to gauge, is it a meaningful purchase or not? Can you get it reused somewhere? What was the journey of this item? And so through a series of events, we're really going to work on equipping students to identify things like greenwashing, but also make good decisions in purchasing to help be more sustainable. And then, of course, integrating actions into your everyday life. And so I think we're really going to hit the ball out of the park in the way of skill building this year, which I'm really excited about.
And then as our resident communications person, I have to mention our social media channels. So people can follow us at FSU Sustainable on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, you name it. And I'm really excited for this upcoming year and using our social media platforms as a way to engage, even if we wouldn't be able to do so face to face because of COVID. I really am looking forward to connecting with students in our campus community through our social media channels and really kind of using that as a tool to give students the very best of our knowledge and those skills that we've learned.
Right. So now I want to move on to, I guess what I like to call the lightning round. This is just a couple quick questions, little fun questions. The first thing I want to know is from both of you, what's your favorite thing about Florida State?
Can it be locational?
It could be anything. Yes. Some people have given me locations. Some people have given me services. Some people have given me really ephemeral stuff, whatever you want.
So one of my favorite things about campus is the trees. The live oaks are incredible, and coming from the north, I've never seen anything like it. And so I'm just awestruck every single time I come on campus, and I'm genuinely excited to be there every single day.
Mine is maybe specific. Mine is Dirac. So I know there's kind of this war between the Strozier people and the Dirac people, and I'm a Dirac kind of gal.
Team Dirac.
Team Dirac.
It's so quiet in Dirac. Oh my God.
It's so quiet. I wrote most of my master's thesis there. I just owe so much of my life as a student to that space and how good of a space I have found it to be for studying and just getting it done.
Also, more efficient Starbucks is there, just to be clear.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think I walked into Dirac until I started working on my master's. And then when I got there and I realized it's so much easier to study in Dirac, I was almost kicking myself for never walking in during undergrad at all. But they've got those private study rooms in the basement floor of Dirac that no one knows they're there, and they're perfect for cramming for a test or working on a paper or something like that.
Yeah, I was definitely sleeping on Dirac all through undergrad. Big regrets.
Okay, so when you guys need to get lunch, what's your favorite place around campus to get food? Local only, please.
Does Krishna count?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, yeah, you can. Yeah, that counts.
Yeah, I love Krishna lunch. So I am vegan for a multitude of reasons, including the environment, and you're not going to find a better bang for your buck on campus vegan-wise. But Krishna, huge piles of food on a plate. You can get refills. and it's super yummy and delicious and vegan. And so it's a staple for our whole office, really. But yeah, Krishna lunch is where it's at.
And then for me, if you're willing to travel a little bit or maybe hit it on your way to campus, Sweet Pea is one of my favorite restaurants in Tallahassee. It is also vegan, but they have a falafel wrap that is incredible. And they also have just really amazing lemonade. I'm always in it for their basil lemonade.
Oh my
it's
gosh,
delicious.
the basil lemonade.
So
I
good.
live a block away from Sweet Pea, so I end up there. I'm not vegan, but I end up there a lot just because it's so good. My wife was vegetarian for years, so that's why I started eating there. I can't get away from the BLT melt. It's so good, and the poutine, the vegan poutine, is like insanely delicious.
That's so dangerous. I couldn't live that close. My entire paycheck, I would just be there every single day.
It's nice, and it's so close. I walk there usually. It's really nice. It's like a block and a half away. Yeah, it's just on Tharp Street, not too far from campus, really. So if you're living in that area, or if you even want to make the trek out, I would totally agree. Sweet Pea Cafe is so good.
It's worth it. Yeah, I'm not vegan either. I would consider myself plant forward, but yeah, even as like a non-vegan person, Sweet Pea is incredible.
Yeah, it's really good, and the brunch is really good too.
Mm.
So what have you guys been consuming while you're stuck at home, or otherwise like quarantined or socially distant? Have you been binging any books or movies or anything like that?
We started a Sustainable Campus book club, which has been really fun, and that's something we've done for our own personal development and professional development. And so that's been great. We have read a couple of books kind of about personal life skills, and then right now we're reading a book specifically about climate communication. So that one's been really handy. But otherwise, I've actually picked up sewing, and I used to sew a lot. So now I sew in my free time. I try not to have too much screen time. I feel like working virtually and being attached to my computer all day, when I'm done with working, it's really important for me to step away from it and, not see a screen for the rest of the night.
Yeah, definitely valuing that unplugging time a little bit more. But if anybody is interested in that book that we're reading right now, I'm really enjoying it as a environmental communications person, but it's called Don't Even Think About It: Why Our Brains Are Wired to Ignore Climate Change by George Marshall. And outside of reading for our Sustainable Campus book clubs and just on my own time, I've been continuing to spend a lot of time outdoors. There's a ton of places around Florida State, around Tallahassee, that students can go and experience the outdoors. Some of my personal favorite trails that are in the area are the Leon Sinks Trail. So it's a little ways south of campus, but really, really beautiful. There's several sinks, which are kind of these sinkholes that fill up with water. Sometimes they're like little natural springs. It's a really, really nice trail. There's also Cascades Park, which is a really great place to run or ice skateboard, and it's paved, so it's perfect for that. And that's very close to campus, close to downtown. And then there's also, I have to plug Outdoor Pursuits because I was a trip leader back in the day, but also just a big fan of going on their trips as well. And it's a good way for students to connect with the outdoors and with a guide if they would like to go with a group and make friends. So
yeah, we actually had Sean from Outdoor Pursuits on this show a couple, I think it was episode 2. And I noticed now he and another Sean at Campus Rec have started a YouTube series called, I think it's Sean and Sean in the Wilderness, or Sean and Sean Go Outside, or
Sean and
something
Sean in
like
the
that.
Outdoors, yes.
That's it. Yeah, Sean and Sean in the Outdoors. And they've been posting YouTube videos on the Campus Rec page where they just like go to cool outdoor stuff around town. And I thought that was really cool. I love how this, this pandemic is like obviously terrible, but it's created some really neat things, I think, on our campus and really around the world. It's kind of forced people to like rethink how they do their jobs and what we're doing and how we can better communicate with each other. So I guess that's kind of like a silver lining, is that we get things like Sean and Sean in the Outdoors.
Oh yeah, definitely. And if you are an outdoor person, there is a really great resource, which we always have to recommend, and it's called Trailahassee. And it's a website that's a huge log of all the trails in the area, and you can figure out what the terrain is, what it's used for, and if you want to go there.
Yeah, there really are a lot of trails around Tallahassee. There's tons of outdoor stuff to do here. Okay, so my last kind of lightning round question, or really my last question in total, is if you could only give our incoming students one piece of advice, what would it be?
I think my piece of advice that I just give to everyone always is always take the chance on yourself. I think it can be really easy to preclude ourselves from different opportunities because we think we might not make it. But if I had had that mentality, I don't think I would be in this job. I don't think I would be in this career field. And the worst anyone is ever going to tell you is no. And so I think always putting yourself out there and trying something new and not being afraid of evolving into who you are going to be. And just, always taking the chance on yourself and trusting your journey. And I know that's the worst thing to say. People are like, oh, I want instructions. But, you get to the flip side of it and you look back and you're like, you know what? It was actually pretty great. So figuring out as you go is kind of nice.
Mine is kind of similar. I would say always just speak it out loud. Speak your interests out loud. Tell people what you're interested in. Tell people what you want to do. Don't be afraid to talk to your faculty, your professors. Go to their office hours. Talk about your interests. Talk about your interests to the people that you meet. And don't be afraid to kind of speak those things into existence. I know looking back at my life and kind of the way that I got here, a lot of the way that I did that was just building relationships with people and just telling stories and speaking about things that I was interested in, and just being able to kind of form those connections with people along the way. It wouldn't have happened if I wouldn't have said those things that I was the most passionate about or love to do. And so don't be afraid to speak about the things that really kind of get you going and the things that you're passionate about.
There you go. Some great advice from both of our guests, Cyndel, Brunell, and Michelle Presley from Florida State Sustainable Campus. Thank you so much for being here with us today, and go Noles.
Thank you, Mike. Go Noles.
Thanks again to Michelle and Cyndel for their time. If you'd like to learn more about Sustainable Campus, check out sustainablecampus.fsu.edu and follow @FSU Sustainable on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. If you've been enjoying the show, we'd really appreciate you leaving us a rating, review, or recommendation on iTunes or whatever podcast app you use. Word of mouth is also a huge help for us, so please share the show with any of your friends or family members who might enjoy it. For our next episode, we're running away to the FSU Flying High Circus. If you have any questions about our very own on-campus Big Top, please send them to us on social media. We are @FSU Admissions on Twitter and Facebook, and @FSU.admissions on Instagram. You can also email questions or feedback on the show to admissions@fsu.edu, including the word podcast in the subject line. As always, our theme music is the world-renowned Florida State University Marching Chiefs. Recordings courtesy of Mark Records, Clarence, New York, markcustom.com. Don't forget to subscribe to the show in Apple or Google Podcasts, Spotify, or on your podcast app of choice. Thanks again for listening, and go Noles.